Morning. So tonight, David is running us in Barbarians of Lemuria, and it's going to be amazing. This is I purchased the PDF last week, $4 on Drive to RPG, Mythic Edition, and created a character, perused the book, created a character, and then perused the book again, and then I thought I would go ahead and make a quick look see in a way at this amazing game. I'm looking forward to it. This is a game I've wanted to play for a long time, but did not buy it until David mentioned he was interested in running it. So I'm going to screen share a little bit here, not a lot, but a little bit. Uh, Barbarians of Lemuria, which is pretty sweet. Um, I don't know why that's showing up there. There it goes. Okay. This is by Simon Washbourne, and I believe I have other OSRs by Mr. Washbourne. I cannot remember, um, but I think I've had more than one other game that, in the past. I may still own some other Washburn if it's the same gentleman. I can't remember. Anyway, they were Lulu OSRs, I believe, that I purchased of this gentleman's work. So I was already familiar with that work, although I'd never seen this. This is the Mythic Edition 2.6. Fantastic. 200. I mean, it's like 212 pages. Okay, so the gist of this, a couple of things that I think make this phenomenal, outstanding introduction write-up about what is swords and sorcery. So well represented here. What is it, and what are your heroes like, and what is this meant to be different than Lord of the Rings, different than fantasy? Then a great job outlining the players and the GM, their jobs, their roles, some of the key terms. So early in the book, we get a key terms look, outstanding, simple rules, and then careers. So I want to talk a little bit about one of the things I really love about this is character gen. This reminds me a little bit of Traveler in that you have careers. It's very simple. It's point buy for your attributes, point buy for your combat role stuff. You have 4 ranks, and you got to put how many numbers you want in that. Very, very cool. And then we have boons or traits, which we get from boons boons. Um, oh God, what's the best way to define this? Okay, let's do it this way. Uh, the gist of Barbarians of Lemuria is a 2d6 sum system. You must roll 9 or better to succeed, right? And then there's further details of failure, further details of epic success of that. You have boons, which will add a third die to that roll, a task roll, combat roll. And a boon means you get to take the best sum of those 2 dice. And then banes, which you generally get from flaws, or I guess you could have a circumstance in game where you are in a way suffering a bane, but for the most part, flaws would create a bane, and a bane is you roll 3 dice, but the third is a penalty die, and you must take the sum of the 2 lowest rolls, and that's it. That's the game in a nutshell. You need a 9 or better to succeed. You can have boons, which is a bonus die attached to that roll to take the best sum, or you can have a bane, which is a penalty die rolled, and again you take the sum of the worst 2 dice. Then there are modifiers, so you can still have a +1 or a +2. Those generally come from your attributes, or they come from your career, or they can come from your combat abilities. So, for instance, let's say I'm rolling to see who goes first in priority in combat. I would get to add my initiative score to my dice total, and that would give me a total. And if I succeed, I already get to go before any bad guy. But if I succeed critically or legendary success, then I would get to go first among my colleagues, right? So it's very cool. So again, nine or more success. There are going to be some modifiers to that. Pluses and minuses can occur for that, but also boons and banes, which are bonus dice and penalty dice. Then we have hero points, which we can spend all number of ways. The hero points, start the game generally with 5, unless you have a boon or a bane that would affect that. Um, and the great thing about those, again, we can spin them to re-roll dice. We can spin them to sunder a shield or a sword. We can spin those to, uh, avoid dying. There's all kinds of ways to spend hero points, and they can be spent, pretty liberally to have epic moments, right? If I roll boxcars for epic success, I can spend a hero point in conjunction with that and make it a legendary success, which would be a very heroic action, right, in combat or something like that. So that's it. I mean, that's the simple gist of it. And of course, getting to what I started this video about, again, I love the character gen. We get point buy, we rank. With 4 points, you rank your attributes. 4 points, you rank your combat abilities. And then you have up to 4 careers, and a career can be ranked again also out of 4 points. So, for instance, I selected my home country, which gave me a free boon, or a free trait, which counts as a boon, which means I get that just from where I'm from. And then I selected my first career, hunter, and then I took a boon from that. But then I needed to take a flaw, right? I took a trait with that, which is a boon, but then I have to take a flaw from the same career, right? So I did that, and then my second career was taken captive and made a gladiator. So I was taken as a slave slash gladiator, really. And I get to take, if I wanted to, I could take a trait from that, and I did. I took hard to kill, but then I took also from that a flaw. And then, of course, from there, I had slave, just straight slave. And then from that, I had my fourth career, which was beggar. I escaped as a slave and a beggar. So there's this career. It's very cool. You pick 4 careers, you rank them, and the rank just accounts for how long. So as a hunter, that's my longest career, 2 points. And then my gladiator career was 1 point. My slave career was zero. So very short time as a slave, and then one as a beggar. So my hunter life, early in my life, was my longest career, and that just gives again that can draw up in narrative play. The GM or myself could say, hey, my career as a hunter, I think plays in here for a +1 or something, and they might, or I think this could give me a bonus die here, David, because I'm hunting. And the one thing I'm good at is, I spent two ranks in hunting, and the GM might say, yeah, that's fair, right? So it represents kind of a multi-dimensional look at your career. But what's cool about it is you need to have like a little write-up, so you can just list your 4 careers and the boons and the banes are the flaws that come with that. But I did, like the book suggests, I actually wrote 4 little sentences to kind of explain my history before we're into this, right? So I am known as Bello the Vagabond. So my last career was as a beggar. So I'm a Shyamalan hunter, and I'm known as Bello the Vagabond. So at this stage of my launching into the sessions, my character will have been basically a beggar with this background in gladiatorial combat and hunting as a young man, etc. So very, very cool. Again, not making a player utilizing magic or alchemy. I'm not certain exactly how that works, but I know alchemists or those who have magic abilities will have points to use toward those things. So that's part of the book I haven't spent much time reading yet, because I'm not running a magic class character. I'm not running an alchemist character. I don't have any of those kind of. So I don't know. I'm not real familiar with the mixing of potions or how magic works. So I'll learn that, and I'll probably read again a little bit, peruse this a little bit before game time tonight. But it's deep. I mean, 212 pages. Everything is covered. This is not a game that leaves stones unturned. This game leaves no stone unturned. It is defined. So in that sense, it is a traditional role playing game book in the sense that it defines everything, and it's traditional in that way. It reminds me a lot of Traveler. What little bit of experience I have with Traveler, I love the career, the character gen in Traveler. I think is fantastic. This reminds me a little bit of that. You're not rolling randomly on a chart for your career like I did in Traveler, things like that. But but it's a sense that you have a background. You literally do have your character is who he is because he's lived already so many lives, so much of his life, so much of his career. And so it's very cool. And then the 2d6 roll over equal to or over a number is Traveler's system in that sense. So it reminds me kind of a Barbarians Traveler game, which is very, very cool. Again, I don't know if it's meant to be that. I don't know if it's an OSR of that system or not. I have no idea. It may even mention in the fine print in here that this says OSR owes itself to the OGL OSR. I don't know if it does. I'm not certain if this is an OSR game using the OGL for, say, the Traveler system. I have no idea. So you'll have to forgive me if that's true. Then it's in the book. I guarantee it. If it's not, then it certainly is a fantastic 2d6 sum system, right? No, I don't see the OGL in this book. So this is not an OGL licensed game. This is a straight original game, like our game. Dark Age of Man is an original system. We do not use anything from any other game. So it looks like Barbarians of Lemuria is too an original game that is unique in its every way, right? Which is very cool. And I'm not certain why there it is, the pages. So if there is something in here that harkens to what it is, then I have missed that. I have missed that bit. But it is so far, and it's a game that when I heard about it and I heard RPG colleagues in the community years ago talk about it, and a couple of live play sessions, I believe, way back in the day, I knew this was interesting, but I had just never bought it and I didn't know the details. So it's going to be great for tonight. But I thought we would quickly cover a quick book look, I guess. And because I have PDF, I don't really want to share a whole lot of that here. I don't want to give away, but I wanted to share a little bit about the system, and maybe this will also help the guys tonight who haven't had a chance to look at the book, right? So have 2d6 ready to rock and roll. Uh, you have hero points to spend. You're going to be rolling, trying to get 9 plus. You're going to be adding attributes to that die roll. You're going to be subtracting attributes from that die roll if you have poor attribute. You're going to have boons that could give you a penalty bonus die. You're going to have flaws, which give you a penalty die. If depending on how you make your character, or depending on which character he takes. I know David's providing some pre-gens, so I think Dell's going to, for instance, going to have to select a pre-gen tonight. And there's languages, of course, much of that based on your mind, how many languages you get, or if you have backgrounds that provide extra or boons that provide extra. So my character, for instance, is illiterate. That's one of his flaws. So I would take a penalty die when I'm trying to read a sign, or I'm trying to decipher text. My character would, a matter of fact, I don't even know if I would roll for most things. It was about readings, comprehension. I think I'm illiterate, so it might be a signage I might have to roll for. Text I probably would never be able to decipher, right? Again, that would be up to David, how my character would somehow pick pieces out of text, like an old scroll or some text on a wall or something. But illiterate is one of the flaws I had to suffer for one of the boons, right? So I have keen hearing, right? That's part of where I come from. So that was free. And as a hunter, I have keen. What do I have? I have night sight. As a hunter, I have night sight. That one I had to also take a flaw for. That was the feels the cold, right? So when it's cold, I will suffer a penalty dice when I'm doing things in the cold weather or in the cold. I would suffer a penalty die. So pretty epic if we're in the cold region or it's for some reason I'm cold, my character would have a penalty die to everything, which is pretty intense. And then I also have illiterate, which gets me hard to kill. So as a gladiator, I took hard to kill. That just gives me +2 to my life points. Life points are like hit points. You got a hit point bubble, you got a life point bubble. As you take damage, that life point bubble comes down, and as you get into the negatives, you're unconscious and potentially dying. If you get to -5 plus, you're dead. So hard to kill just gives me a +2 bonus to life points, and then I took again illiterate, when it was my final negative to cover those two extra traits, positive traits. So that's how that works, right? So again, we have melee combat. So you have a melee modifier. You rank your melee. You rank your initiative, your melee, your ranged, and your defense. Those are added to those types of attacks. So melee attack, that rank would be added to my die roll succeeded hitting. Once I hit, right? And again, you also subtract the enemy's defense. So your defense is rather important as you're going to subtract that number from all enemy chances of hitting you. They only need a 9 plus as well. So if my defense is a 1, they would need a 10 better to hit me. That's just to hit me, right? So very simple how the game functions with melee and defense, ranged and defense. Very cool, right? Ranged may have other options. So I haven't perused ranged as much as my character is right now. I've looked at the combat rules, but I haven't perused all of the modifiers for ranged combat. But I'm sure there are other modifiers. Okay. And then, of course, combat is the die. It's a die bit of damage, right? So you might do a 1d6 -3 for a hand to hand. You might do 1d6 light damage for a dagger, let's say. That would be roll 2d6 and take the lowest number to score damage, right? Armor soaks damage. So you have defense to actually succeed at hitting a target and vice versa. And then we have armor soak. We have damage and armor soak. So if you're wearing armor, your armor can soak some of that damage. But it can be pretty intense. A big weapon can cause 2d6 damage, and you have life points of say 12. It's pretty epic. So far, man, it is. I can see how this is going to be fast. This is going to be fluid. This is going to be a conversation among players and GM. It's going to have I would think, a more high adventure style of gaming. It's going to be a lot of, this implies barbarian level movie, barbarian level culture, barbarian level literature. So there's going to be a lot of combat. Combat is going to be a thing, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be quick. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be violent. And those things are all tropes of the barbarian swords and sorcery deal, right? Like magic is magic is generally, there's less of it, and generally the bad guys use it, right? So I love that kind of thing. And this, I think, nails it, right? Now I haven't played it yet. I don't know what it's going to feel like playing. And again, because we have hero points, there was going to be moments where we can what's called twist of fate, right? I can spend a hero point to create something, right? And it gives a great example. I'm locked in a cell, and I use a hero point to find a loose block in the cell that I might be able to, escape the cell, right? So I get to spend a hero point to create a situation that is new. I cannot change what's happened with a hero point. So you're not allowed to go back. You're not allowed to like rewind and reverse something, but I can create something. So there's a way to spend hero points to kind of add a piece. We're locked in a cell. I say, okay, I'm going to spend a hero point here, and I'm going to find where a former prisoner had begun to dig a hole in the far corner of the room and had covered it in hay. And the GM, if he's okay with that, will say, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means we've got a hole that we can maybe wiggle into and start digging it out or something, right? So twist of fate, very cool. So it means we're sharing scenes, right? I love the fact that it talks about scenes. So combat is a scene. So when we're in combat, it's a scene in and of itself. And then most of the game will occur out of combat. So most of the scenes that occur in the game will be non-combat. But then combat itself is a scene from beginning to end, will be a scene, right? Like a movie, right? Movie combat scene. And so I dig that. I dig games that abstract time. I dig games that abstract turns and rounds. Turns and rounds can feel a little formulaic, or can feel really sometimes restricted in what we can do and how much time we have to do it. So I get it for tactical games and strategy games. That's very important. But I like games that kind of use a more cinematic. It allows for more cinematic style of gaming, a little more fluid style of gaming, right? Especially when we're going to be using hero points to affect a die roll or to affect sundering a shield or something like that. So very cool. But anyway, the gist of this is you need to roll a 9 plus with 2d6, and you need to add modifiers for attributes or for combat abilities to this. And of course, you may have a trait that gives you a bonus die that would let you take the best of the two. You may have a flaw, which would force you to roll a penalty die, and you have to take the lowest sum of the 3 dice of the two remaining dice. So very simple, very cool, and I cannot wait. It's got a real interesting addition. The creatures are fantastic. So the monsters use the same stat block that characters use, which is cool. Our game characters and NPCs of a certain level are completely different stat blocks from our from our creatures, right? Creatures might have health. Creatures have health in our game. They don't have wounds. So our game monsters literally have hit points. They don't have wounds, but our characters suffer wounds, right? So it's a lot more deadly and a lot more cinematic for our characters when they suffer fatigue, wounds, dying, right? But the monsters just have health points, and that can just be accrued of in the fight as to how they're being damaged, etc. Right? Okay. So our game really has two different types of stat blocks. This game has the same stat blocks for every creature, which is cool, right? So once you know that, which means it has boons and banes, right? So in that sense, it reminds me a lot of Blood and Bone, right? Where characters had the same stat blocks as creatures in the book, right? And they all had to fit that boons. They all had to fit those particular skills, requisites, right? So even an assassin in Blood and Bone, to have certain skill level, had to have prerequisites to work that out. If not, you could create anything you wanted to as a GM in these games and make it work. But I generally tried to follow the what Blood and Bone would present to me as a GM. I needed to make sure if I created monsters, I was pretty careful about not giving them something they couldn't have at that level, right? If that makes sense, because you had to have certain levels to have certain skill chances, right? So anyway, but the other thing is great maps, right? Great world in this, right? Much of the book is dedicated to the lore, the cities, the locations, the gods. There's 20 gods in this game, which is fantastic. Although I went through them fairly closely, I did not see a god for hunters, right? Which I thought was kind of interesting. So there's the kind of the Mother Earth god. There's the god for the farmers, god for death, but I didn't find one kind of for hunters. And I thought that was interesting. There may be one, I just missed it. But I thought, okay, I definitely, as a Shambhalan hunter, I would think there would be a god that kind of, that my character might revere, and I didn't find that readily. So I'm going to go back tonight before session and look at the gods closely and see if there is not a god that the Shambhalan hunters might prefer, right? Because that's important to me when I'm playing a character from a world, right? How much of this world lore do I affects my character, and I think obviously it should, because this we're playing an IP, right? But there's a great section on all the boats, right, for pirates, and great maps, great lore, and then there's a section on watercraft, which is so cool. And this game even has sky craft, right? This has airborne type vehicles, sky boats, which to me I've never really thought of in barbarian sword and sorcery. I think that's obviously out there in other lore and other IP, but I thought that was very cool to see, and the detail of all the different water vessels and epic large scale combat rules and sea combat rules. So again, they don't leave. It's a complete rule book. It defines everything. It puts a rule for everything, and that again allows this in that sense. This is very traditional in that sense, and this is very much a complete rule book that anticipates you are going to follow the rules. You're going to use these rules, right? As opposed to a game like ours, which says we have a universal, very simple system to adjudicate every possible thing, but we don't limit whether the game can go from micro to macro in a few minutes, right? We can go from guys arguing at the Witten in our game to a battlefield, right? Within a few moments of session time, we can be on the battlefield with epic armies. There's no special rules for any of those. What your task roll, whether I'm in an argument, or my task roll, whether I'm commanding a legion of men. So our game, in that sense, leaves much of it to our narrative and what we're trying to achieve, and the difficulty values are set based on either creatures, armies, or what the GM is. The presenter has taken it. So in that sense, Barbarians of Lemuria is very traditional. It really does have a rule for all of how to do all of this stuff, which is, ultimately how most rule books present themselves, if it matters, right? And it matters. So they're basically saying it matters, or it wouldn't be giving you rules for how to conduct these combats, right? How sea vessel combats, etc. So it matters, or it wouldn't be in the book, right? And our game, it matters, but it matters mostly what we say. And then the DV and the task resolution, right? So it's kind of fun to compare these kind of again, more traditional style game books, rule books, rules with how intensive they are versus how um, simple they are, right? And I would argue ours is definitely meant to be a simple rule book, but can be epic in whatever direction you want to go. So very cool. All right, I just want to share this. I will share, of course, the session live. We're going to record the session. I will share that tomorrow. And I'll do of course, you know me, I will do a player recap and reflections on this game and this experience. And I cannot wait. David's a fantastic GM. Dale will be there. Todd will be there. I will be there. So we should have 3 or 4 players plus David. And this ought to be fantastic fun. Anyway, everybody out there, have a great week. And we'll see you again.